Have you ever considered caring for your spine like you care for your teeth? Have you ever considered how important your spine is, how functionally important it is for your entire body, how it basically makes up your body's ability to translate all the messages from your brain into the rest of your body and make you have a happy and long living life? Well, we're going to get into that today with Dr. Daniel. This is going to be Break and Build, and I'm going to be your host, Billy Lutz. Today, we are going to be talking about chiropractic, a topic that is super near and dear to my heart. But without further ado, let me introduce our wonderful host and guest on the show. He's got his own podcast as well. It's called Nexus.
Yeah, the Nexus podcast.
The Nexus podcast. I'm going to pin that in the comments below if you guys do want to check it out. It's absolutely amazing. I've been featured on one of his episodes before I started doing this as well. So Dr. Daniel, met him in Atlanta. He's graduated from Life University, which is going to be one of the top tier chiropractic schools. Not only that, you're also a teacher as well before you went into chiropractic,
Yeah, I
right?
taught high school English for 6 years before transitioning, so.
Man, that's incredible. So not only is he a gifted chiropractor, a really deep thought, basically mindset guru, he's also really good at explaining things. So that's why I thought it would be a great thing for us to have Dr. Daniel on our podcast today so that we can kind of delve into chiropractic, because chiropractic saved my life. I'm not even going to lie. It saved my life when I was 14 years old. I was really into skateboarding. You guys know the story. And I was skateboarding so much, probably like 7 hours a day consistently almost every day. And skateboarding is not a very balanced activity. And so by constantly pushing up with my left leg and pushing down with my right leg, you can kind of see if you're watching this on YouTube that kind of would then, as it's doing to my shoulders, imbalance my hips. And so at that point, for me, I was like really imbalanced, and I was like, what do I do with this? And I wasn't feeling good. My hips were off. It was hard for me to walk. And I told my parents, being a 14-year-old child, they'd never been to a chiropractor. Nobody in my family had ever been to a chiropractor. I told them, I need to go to this chiropractor. I would always drive past it on the bus, and it was Discover Chiropractic. And I told them, like, you have to take me to the chiropractor. It was never, I need to go to the doctor. I need to go see a medical doctor. I need to get x-ray. I just knew that I needed to go see a chiropractor. And it wasn't until recently I asked my mom, I was like, how did, I go to a chiropractor? Like, I was so young. I didn't have any thought. There was no thought behind it. There was no reasoning. I didn't have anybody convincing me. And she's like, I don't know. I was going to ask you the same thing at one point or another. And I was like, okay, so that's crazy that it got me there. And that like literally put me back on track. And I've been relatively consistent with chiropractic since I've been 14. And some of you guys may be like, what is chiropractic? So Dr. Daniel, chiropractic in your viewpoint, because there's many different levels of chiropractic as well, right? So we can get into all that as well. But I want them to understand like what is chiropractic and why is it important?
For sure. So, dude, one, before I even get started, thank you for having me on. Super grateful. Always love talking to people about this, especially people who may not know the full extent of chiropractic. So this is what I always tell people is like a baseline conversation, is that you got to understand exactly what Billy said, is that your brain controls everything that happens in your body. So if your brain is not functioning well, then nothing in your body is going to function as well as it could, right? So where we're looking for is like people like you who are entrepreneurs, people who are out to make a difference in their lives in a number of different ways, make a difference in lives of people, of other people's lives as well, is making sure that they have a healthy nervous system and that they're functioning well. So the trick to that is, like I said, is that the brain controls all of that. But what most people don't understand and most people don't know, at least on the level that I do, is that movement of the joints of the spine is key in having a healthy nervous system. So if you think of your brain like a muscle, the only way to get a workout to your brain is to have your spine moving, and to have your spine moving appropriately. So you could have a spine that's moving, but it's moving poorly, and your brain's not getting the workout the way that it could. So from a very simple standpoint is like, I always explain this to people, think about if you had one bicep that was really weak and then one that was really strong. You go in the gym every day and you do the same weight, same amount of reps on both sides. Both sides are going to get stronger, but you're still going to have an imbalance and a weakness on one side. So we look at the brain the same way. So the point of chiropractic care is to move the joints of the spine so that we get a stimulation or a workout to the brain, so that that affects how the entire body functions. So stronger brain you have, the stronger bodily function you're going to have. And that includes digestion, that includes energy, that includes sleep, that includes posture, that includes your ability to have good relationships. It includes your ability to be able to have motivation to stick with a task. Like, dude, the list could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like a baseline. So I always tell everybody is like, if you're looking for someone to save you or fix you, I would have you consider that you actually don't need to be fixed. You just need to address your own brain, because your brain has the capacity for you to be healthy. Like, you are your best doctor as long as your brain is functioning well. And if it's not, then every other system in your body is going to suffer. So that's like big picture, and we can get into as much of the weeds or details as you want to from that. So
for sure. Yeah, guys, that's super powerful. So if we're listening to what Dr. Daniel's talking about, it's basically, if I have this correctly from your viewpoint, brain, obviously then the brain is able to translate messages through the spinal cord that's going to go into virtually every single thing in our entire body.
Yep.
Right. And so we're looking for positive neural feedback of when our brain puts a message, it goes down into the spine, into the whatever organ, tissue, everything entirely translated through the spine. And then we need to have our optimal function of our joints, our spine, and everything like that for the brain to get the appropriate feedback back so it can have this neural network activity going on.
Yep, 100%. And so then, like, everybody asks the question of, well, how would my spine stop moving well? And like, not to go like too far off topic, but so you guys kind of understand how this whole thing works, is that imagine that you have some kind of stress. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, you're staring at your phone for too long, you're on the computer for too long, you get an email from your boss, like finances are tight, whatever. Dude, there's a ton of stuff with like COVID in and of itself. All those things are stresses.
Right.
And if you think back to like if we were cavemen and women, then our body was designed to do two things in the time of stress, is fight or run away. But the trick now is that we're not fighting and we're not running away. We're getting cut off and we just sit in our car, or we get the email, or we're watching some stressful TV show, or like whatever the thing is. And then the brain is like, dude, I'm literally releasing hormones to get you to fight or run away, and you're not doing it. So the body goes into like this protective state. If you've ever seen somebody get in a fight, you know nobody fights like this. They're like crunched over, like ready to go. So the same thing happens with the brain and these stress hormones, is the brain's like, you're not fighting or running away. So if you're going to get attacked, dude, I'm going to go into like full on protective mode. And then that's what keeps the joints of the spine from moving well. So like you could have movement and you could be walking or whatever, working out. I see people like this all the time who are like, I work out and I still have this stuff going on. It's because the joints of the spine aren't moving properly. So even though there's movement, it's because there's this stress feedback loop stuck on in the system. And the only way to break it is through, the only way that we know of now is chiropractic adjustments.
So it's basically your body is programmed. And I feel this, I honestly speaking, when you're talking about this, I feel this in the car too. Like whenever I'm in the car for too long of a period of time, I don't know, it's like my body just feel like a stress state environment. And then I'll notice myself starting to like get a little irritated, and I'll start to close inwards a little bit. And then also times, if you guys start becoming more aware of your body, which, you know, on this podcast, we always talk about being as conscious as possible. The more awareness you are and you bring to your life, the better. And the more power you're going to have. And that's what Dr. Daniel's talking about, that the brain is going to be unleashing its conscious awareness through chiropractic care so that we can not be stuck in that fight or flight state. I mean, imagine like a 80-year-old person and they've never really taken care of themselves. They never thought about anything like this. They've never been under chiropractic care. And you may see them, it's called Chi-Fi. They're just very like bent over, right? And as opposed to if you stay under consistent chiropractic care where we're addressing these things, you can get them back into an optimally functioning. And don't say, I don't slouch, I don't need chiropractic care, because that's not the case, right? Like,
yeah,
let's say, like, because I tell people this all the time. We talked about this on the last episode. If just because you feel good right now doesn't mean you don't want to feel better right now. Don't use pain as a motivator to get yourself to a rut before you take action. We want to be proactive. So if somebody can be like, I feel pretty good, like, I wonder how much better I could feel from chiropractic care. Like, how much greater of a response or how fast of a response could you get from patients if that was just their mindset coming in?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's like, I mean, a big part of what we do. So in my office, we live by 4 P's that I created on my own. So they're posture, presence, productivity, profit. So posture being the first piece is exactly what you addressed. The interesting thing about posture though is like, we're sold this kind of, if you just stretch your pecs and then you strengthen your back muscles, your posture is going to improve.
Sure.
But the problem is that your frontal cortex, which is shut off by your stress hormones, is the part of the brain that controls your postural muscles. So like you can literally look at somebody, and if there's somebody who slouches over, like head forward, shoulders rolled forward, we already know that's a bad posture, and it's because they're in a stressed out state, chronically stressed out state. So your brain controls your postural muscles, not your muscles just being tight. Like your muscles are tight because your brain is telling those muscles to be tight. So if your brain is strong and it tells those muscles to relax, then we can start to sit up and be taller. So from that, then we get into presence. And this gets into what you were talking about, is like a lot of the people that I take care of some very big entrepreneurs. One of my favorite stories, I had a guy coming in. He's coming in to me for like 4 weeks. And one of the things he noted, he's like, dude, I'm just here for performance because I've heard like some of these other people that you take care of. And he comes in after a weekend and he's like, dude, I got to tell you, he's like, the only thing I've changed in my regimen of what I do is he's like adding this into the mix. And he's like, I've had many $1 million years of sales. He's like, I've had $1 million months, but I've never had $1 million day. And he's like, this past weekend I did $1 million day for the first time. And he's like, literally, I can attribute it directly to being here. Like, that's the only thing that's changed. And so from that perspective, it's like, yeah, dude, it's not just about pain or about neck pain, back pain, headaches is what most people think chiropractic is. If you have better posture, you're going to be more present because the part of the brain, again, frontal cortex, is responsible for your ability to be present, stay focused on a task, be motivated. If you have more presence, you're going to be more productive. And that productivity is going to lead to ultimately, 1, making more money, but 2, just getting more stuff done. And then my favorite is profit. So yeah, we talk about making more money. I obviously just shared that story, but what I really get passionate about is like people just being able to profit from life experience. So all the time, like another example, dude, Rip Six-Pack guy comes in from CrossFit into my office and he's like, I eat healthy, I do CrossFit, I got a ripped 6-pack, like there's no way that you could help me. And then 2 months into care, he's like, I'm training less than I've trained in like a year and I'm still setting PRs on all my lifts. He's like, how is that possible? And it's because we access the part of the brain that allows him for all of that performance stuff in the first place. So this stuff can be there and you not even feel it, which is why it changed my life. That's why I quit teaching, is because it allowed me this place of like passion and purpose, and I knew that there was something more for my life, and it allowed me to feel safe enough to chase after it. So I didn't need to be a slave to a paycheck. And we took a bunch of risk to do it, but those risks all paid off, and I would have never felt safe from a brain perspective to even do it if it weren't for chiropractic care.
So you think that the chiropractic care in itself opened you up a thought process to be able to chase it?
Yeah, 100%. Because of the chiropractic adjustments, and I won't speak for every chiropractor, but the way we do stuff here in my office, like I'm not hating on any chiropractor. It's just different. It's like a matter of, looking at the body, we do things a little bit differently. But one of the things that I noticed for me personally, and why I got so fired up about it, is like, as I started getting chiropractic care for myself, back when I was 24, 25 years old, so that's like 10 years ago now, I realized that like the things that mattered to me, I started pursuing even more. And the things that I hated, it really shined a light on like, I'm miserable doing this, where before I was just settling. And so we know that the chiropractic adjustment affects the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is responsible. It's also shut off by stress hormones. So, and that's responsible for your ability to be conscious, to be aware, to be present, to be motivated, to have willpower and determination, and to like look at things as good versus bad or right versus wrong. Or even there's a part of that cortex that's called VMPFC, which is a filter. So it says that's stressful and not safe, that's safe and it's okay. And so what happens is like a lot of time people's brains get trained into that's not safe, that's not safe, that's stressful, that's not safe. And so people like literally just put their dreams to the side because they're chronically stressed out. But that's like the part of the brain that we wake up through the adjustments. And this is, dude, I see all the time people move away from here and they're like, I got this job and 2 hours away, I moved away from my family, I gave up this job that I hated. And people taking like big risk in their lives for the better because they start chasing after passion and purpose versus like living small, being slave to a paycheck, trading time for money, all those things that we could talk about. But it's all due to that part of the brain that's directly affected when we do the adjustments.
That's powerful, guys. If you guys didn't get that, you should probably rewind and watch that a couple times because there's a lot of knowledge dropped in there. And I would say that the biggest thing for me is always just giving you back more power in your own mindset. That's the most powerful thing. It's basically the adjustments allowing you to become more aware of the things that you want, to realize that, we only have one life and one shot at this, and to be scared. Sometimes you get stuck in that rut. And if anything can break you out of that, like Dr. Daniel talked about, and chiropractic care can do that like, that's where you need to be. And it's not that, like, it sounds risky, like, right? It sounds risky to do these things, but in reality, like, what is actually risk? Like, is risk actually anything? Like, sure, you can be working your 9-to-5 job and just not be happy, but where's the pleasure in that? You know, you're not going to be walking this, you know, profound line of like, what is possible for me if you're always just scared of taking your next step, like you're going to slip on some ice.
Yeah, for sure. So like, I'll give a good example of this is I regularly see people who are like, it would be so great if I hate my job. I wish I could quit. Right. And so for me, when I see that, one of the things I ask people is like, is that actually true? And so if you're chronically stressed out, if you have stress hormones just flowing in the system all the time because joints of the spine aren't moving well, then it puts you in a place of like not having the ability to have rational and logical thought. So for someone who's like, I can't quit my job, even though I'm miserable, it stresses me out every day. I'm sick all the time. It makes me want to eat bad food. Like I don't want to go out and see my friends. It's like wreaking havoc on all these other aspects of their lives. And they're like, I can't give up my job. But I would ask them like, and I ask myself this is like, what's the worst case scenario if you just decided to pursue what you were actually passionate about? And for most people, like even for me is like, dude, what? I have to move back in with my dad. Like that I'm not going to be homeless. I'm going to be fed. I have skills. Like I have a doctorate. I have a teaching degree. Like I have all this stuff, all these skills, all these knowledge, all this relationship capital with other people. So it's like from that perspective, when we get people functioning at a place where their brain's like, okay, logically and rationally, yes, maybe it doesn't make sense to give up this paycheck, but I'm going to be so much happier and I'm actually going to be healthier as a result. And to see people do it, then they're like, oh, my worst case scenario never even happened. And then I'm just happy. And like, I don't know, man, it's just such a different way to look at it. But this happened for me because I was like, I can't quit teaching. My 50K years, like I'm good. I'm so good. And then now I look back at my life and I'm like, damn, man, like I literally just gave it up and so much has opened up to us as a result. And worst case scenario, I had to move in with my dad and it didn't happen. Like I wasn't going to be homeless. My wife wasn't going to leave me, whatever. So Here we are and it's magical. And that wouldn't have ever happened if I didn't have chiropractic care that was affecting my brain to allow me to think through those processes more clearly.
For me, one thing that I always tell people, and you hear it commonly in a lot of personal development is a concept called slaying small dragons before they become big monsters. And so it seems like the chiropractic is the sword that can slay the big monster when it's already become that big monster in your head, right? And what I mean by that is like, let's say you want to start a new venture, right? And instead of you going like, okay, let's just start the new venture right now because it's something small, it's easy. It's like you build this humongous monster in your mind and you haven't even tested it in reality. It's like, I want to start a YouTube channel. Let's just take that. Okay, well, instead of just me pulling up my phone, filming something, and then later on worrying about mic quality, audio quality, what kind of camera you need, do I need to be here and there? You just started it. And then when you see it and you look at it, you're like, oh, well, maybe I can get a little bit better microphone. And then, oh, well, maybe I can edit it a little bit better, or maybe I can talk a little bit better, or maybe I can be a little bit more conscious of my speech pattern and going it one step at a time. Instead of like where Dr. Daniel's talking about, a lot of people have these humongous monsters in their mind because instead of doing that first action step first, they said, oh my gosh, if I start a YouTube channel, then I'm going to need to know how to edit. I'm going to need to hire an editor. Then I'm going to have to buy a $5,000 camera. Then I have to buy a mic. I need a new MacBook. I need all this stuff. And then when you have this $50,000 monster in your mind, you can't slay that thing. But chiropractic is like the sword that allows you to slay this humongous monster of your mind, from what we're gathering here with Dr. Daniel. And I mean, I'm positive of this myself. So I'm just playing the introductory to help Dr. Daniel deliver this message to you guys, that it then allows you to just step through this illusion of the mind that has been created and locked into muscle tension of your body, and then allows the brain to translate that throughout and for you to just basically be happier when most of that stuff never even happens, like you said, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we had it. Like when I decided that I'm not going back to Indiana, we're going to move to California. I'm going to open up a practice here. And we live like I could throw a baseball into the ocean right now. Like one of the things that everybody told us, mentors included, like people who had supported my wife and I, they're like, you can't do it. California's too expensive. The vaccine laws are crazy. There's like all this stuff, dude, that everybody was kind of like telling us, hey, it's not possible. You can't make it work.
Yeah.
And it could have become a huge dragon like you're talking about for us. But my wife and I were both clear enough to be like, okay, what's like the thing that we can do right now today? What if we just come up with a business name? And like, that was the first step. And then when we had that, there was like some confidence behind like, yeah, that sounds awesome. All right, now let's see if we can figure out where we want to live. And then we figured out where we want to live. And like all of the little steps are the thing that gets you to the place. Like, you don't need the big production studio. Like, how many years have you been doing Trainers Club, like your YouTube channel?
3 years.
Okay. And how long has it taken for it to like really take off?
Probably like a year and a half.
Yeah, so none of it happens overnight, right?
Yeah.
Like, our office was crushing it last year. We're like double what we were doing last year now. And so the same, and I look back on it and it's like, dude, we're just still warming up. So it's like, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just got to make the moves in the right direction. And if your brain is not functioning well, then you're not, like, it's so much harder to make those moves and just feel safe doing it. Because ultimately what it comes down to is you have to go all in on you. Like, you got to be certain and confident in yourself. And this is what we do for people is like, I'm not here to fix anybody. I want people to know that, like, dude, when your brain is on fire, like, you can do the stuff that you want to do. You don't got to get a second job to support yourself. You can just go all in on you and what you really want to do and make it happen. And it doesn't need to be perfect in the beginning. But when you have a clear brain, it's very easy to do. When you're stuck in that stress, fear, anxiety, protective state, you can't be on offense at the same time. And that's where that's how we take care of people. Like, I have a very little pain-based practice that's mostly these kind of conversations, allowing people access to a part of their lives and an experience of life that they never even thought was possible, because they get adjusted once a week, twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, whatever it is.
For you guys to be introduced, if you're not very familiar with chiropractic, on this type of conversation, the amount of chiropractors that you would have to probably go through, unless you get really lucky, to start understanding this depth of what chiropractic can do to you, that's why I'm excited to bring this to you guys, is like mind-blowing. I've been to hundreds of chiropractors, and most of them are literally derived around, like we talked about, and there's nothing wrong necessarily with that, but there's just so much more potential to be discovered in that. Like, chasing your passion. It's like you're doing this thing just to get by, as opposed to you just getting excited and doing something that you already love to do. And you're going to do that regardless if you get paid to or not. Most of us are still, even though we're in this stress state, we still are doing things that we really love, but we're just not convinced that we could just go all in on them. Like Dr. Daniel talked about, like, going all in on yourself is like doing something that you're just having fun doing, and you're not even getting paid for it. Like, if you're like video games, and not to judge yourself for that too. If you're like really good at video games, like, how many streamers are there now? Like, back when all these streamers started and Twitch was brand new and doing Halo or video games in general was not a thing. And now there's people making millions of dollars. Now kids are aspiring to be that. Like, there's so much possibility out there. So I want to change this just a little bit into, so like a rudimentary chiropractic approach is like, you know, back, neck pain. How would somebody go about potentially like finding somebody? Because like I said, this is a rare conversation that you will have. And maybe, you know, for myself, I needed it at that time. But for now, for me, being that I'm, 20 years older or so, and that my brain is 20 years smarter, I hope, and that I've been able to think and expand my palate and what my awareness is, that when I go and I experience that type of old chiropractic care, that it's just like, oh, your hips seem off, let me just shove your hips back into place. And I'm not trying to demean that, but, you know, that's essentially kind of what's happening. It doesn't work for my system anymore. And actually, it feels like it does the exact opposite for me. So for you, you'd have to experience where that is for you. But like, how would somebody go about maybe finding somebody, or what type of questions would they ask?
Yeah, I mean, I would start with this, is like, most of us are going to look online. You can get a personal recommendation, like if you know somebody going to a chiropractor, and find out, like, most people love their chiropractors is what it comes down to. So the biggest piece, I would say, if you just go do a Google search in your area, I would look at websites, and if on the front page they have the guy with like the red bulging disc out of his back and like the lightning bolt of pain, and they're advertising like neck pain, back pain, headaches, car accidents, sports injuries, like that kind of stuff, then it's probably not going to be exactly what I'm talking about and what we do. And like, sure, you may get some results from it, but having this kind of understanding and then influencing the brain in the ways that we do strictly through the adjustments is super key. So I would say that's the first thing, is look at how they're marketing and like having the conversation with you. Because if they're talking about pain on your website, they're probably talking about pain in the office, or it's going to be a bait and switch model, which will upset you anyway. So I would not advise that. Not always the case, but I would say like 95% of the time, that's probably what you're going to find. So find somebody who's talking about like lifestyle and wellness, and they're holistic, and they're not trying to sell you a bunch of supplements and pillows and put you on roller tables and hook you up to SEMG and do laser. Like, find somebody who's doing strictly chiropractic, so you don't get pulled in and then get sold a bunch of other stuff. And I can talk about our pyramid of like production and how we look at how supplements are important versus how chiropractic care, how exercise is important versus chiropractic care, etc. But looking for somebody who markets differently. And generally the conversation is going to be around, if they see pregnant mamas and kids, it's probably a pretty good idea that you're in the right place, especially if they see lots of kids. And then looking for, most offices I've seen, I haven't actually found anybody who tailors like specifically to entrepreneurs, like business owner performance as much as we do. But if you find that, you're going to be in the right place. And then the other thing, dude, I would just call and ask people, like, do you take a brain-based approach? Are you focusing on neurology, or are you focusing on putting bones back in place? And if you're focusing on putting bones back in place, then maybe explore some other options.
Because for me personally, I started with the bones back into place, and I needed that at the time, right? And as I've evolved, I need a different approach, and I get more, I feel like, negative feedback when I'm just going to the very standard-based, pain-based chiropractic care, as opposed to being brain-based like Dr. Daniel. And Dr. Daniel, we're, obviously friends, that like I'm pretty particular about who I allow adjust me, number one, just because it just feels unproductive for my system at this point. And maybe that's just because of all of the stuff that I've been through and I put myself through and I want to go through and I want to explore, that I've just become more aware of everything that's kind of going on. Yeah. So in regards to like chiropractic, like what would somebody expect to experience as far as like a relationship? And then can we also talk about, you mentioned kids as well, because I know there's probably a lot of people on here that have kids. Is there like an age limit for people? Like what, just give us a rundown of like what age group would be appropriate for this, if there is any limits, which I know the answer, but I'm gonna let you explain it.
Yeah.
And then also like, as far as like relationship, because I think this is a big one that I really value, is that once your brain, and we talked about it a little bit, starts opening up and has the capacity to start being like full and abundant, the relationships that you have with your life and with your people, with your family, with your coworkers, like everything just starts to change and you just become this completely different person. So could you elaborate on those two?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to start with the relationship piece, and then I'll circle back and we'll hit and talk about kids. So I have what we call in our office a production pyramid. So if you think of the top of the pyramid is the least important, and I'm going to start and work my way backwards, so you guys kind of have an idea of what, and we'll get to relationships in this, but I feel like it's important to talk about all of them. So production pyramid starts on the top is like the hacks and supplements. So a lot of people, we're like marketed this all the time online, right? It's like, take these supplements, they're going to fix everything in your life. That's great, except for if your body's chronically stressed out because joints of your spine aren't moving well, that shuts off the digestive system, because the fight or flight system is the exact opposite of rest and digest. So keyword digest in that. You can't be in fight or flight and rest and digest at the same time. So from that perspective, supplements are like the last thing that we would do, and I would argue of least importance. The second least important thing will be exercise. Now this like blows people's minds, because they're like, well, I exercise and I take supplements and I still have all these things going on. I'm like, yeah, because you didn't address your nervous system. So then the next down from that, more important than hacks and supplements and then exercise, is nutrition. So again, nutrition we get back into, it's important, it's more important than exercise, but same thing, if your body's stuck in fight or flight, it's not in rest and digest. And this is like when I shared the guy, the ripped six-pack CrossFitter, is the reason that he wasn't getting results, and the reason he started setting PRs without working any harder, training any harder, actually training less, is because his body was now absorbing all the stuff that he was eating better, and his body was just more efficient in general. So then from that, down below nutrition is relationships. So relationships are more important than all of those things. And the interesting part about relationships is that our emotional intelligence, our ability to connect from person to person, comes from the prefrontal cortex, which is the same part of the brain that we're affecting when we do chiropractic adjustments. So it's like a light switch or a dimmer switch. We're like turning up the brightness. We're turning up the ability to have better emotional intelligence, to be able to connect with people more deeply, because of the fact that there is the brain being stimulated in that way. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Then the next level down from that is sleep and meditation. So meditation can be prayer for some people. I just call it meditation because not everybody resonates with the word prayer. So sleep and meditation, and then the bottom of the pyramid, the base, the foundation of the pyramid is brain-based chiropractic care. So again, to hit on the piece of relationships is like what I see all the time. And my favorite stories are like the wife comes in and she's like, dude, ever since my husband's in here, he's been such less of an asshole. He's drinking less at night. All of these kind of things that matter, right? So we like see quality of relationships improve, and it's awesome, and it's all because of the way that we affect the part of the brain, the frontal cortex, right? So that's that. I'm gonna pause because I think the camera stopped recording.
Okay. Did you see when?
And we probably lost some of it too.
Okay.
In the middle of the pyramid. I don't know where though. Sorry,
It's
bro.
all good, dude.
Okay, so then to answer, so from a relationship perspective, I guess the most important thing to understand is that you can't have healthy relationships to the level that you could if you had a frontal cortex that was functioning well. And so the frontal cortex is the whole piece of this, and that's what we're affecting when we're doing the chiropractic adjustments. So then when we circle back into kids and we talk about kids, here's what I know to be true from what I've seen. Kids should be having chiropractic care while mom is pregnant. Like, period, hands down, plain and simple. I've talked about it. Stress hormones affect how the brain develops and what parts of the brain are working and not working. So if you can imagine, mom has stress hormones, pregnant mom has stress hormones floating around in her system. Baby's brain is getting affected by those negatively before they take their first breath of life. Now, we can't go in and adjust a baby while mom's pregnant, but we can adjust mom, and we can turn off her stress hormones through these adjustments. So then the other piece of this is once baby's born, like my daughter was adjusted at 30 minutes old. A lot of clients that we have, they are having their kiddos adjusted at 1 day old. They call me, they have me come to their house, and I adjust their kids. So it's never too early. And the way I do it, I do no popping, cracking. So a lot of people get freaked out because they're like, oh my gosh, you're going to like pop my newborn baby's neck. That's not what we do. It's all light force. It's gentle. We can use this on anybody. And dude, it shows, man. Like you see the way my daughter talks. Parents all the time who like come with 2 or 3 kids, and then they're in here with their last kiddo while their mom was pregnant, and they're like, this baby is entirely different than my other 2 kids.
Right.
My other 3 kids have been. And it's literally because if the stress is turned off from those very first breaths of life, it allows for the best development of the babe. It allows for the best absorption of nutrients. It allows for proper brain function. It allows for the best connection to mom and dad. And all of those things are ultimately what contribute to health long-term, and then also success, because the part of the brain that's responsible for success is the frontal cortex. So it all kind of leads back to the brain always, always, always with every conversation that we have.
That is probably one of the most profound things. I'm sure that you guys have listened to this and you're like, I don't know if I can comprehend all this. And so that's totally cool. I would suggest listening to this a few times. I don't think there's anything wrong. And I think it's kind of like a poor thing that we do in our society, where it's like when you get really good information, you never go back and listen to it multiple times before you're able to really comprehend what's going on. And so we've talked about a lot of things in this podcast that are pretty high level and at a rapid pace too. So going back, you hear these things, you've witnessed them in your life, and then coming back and sharing this to somebody to make sure that they can understand that. And if you guys want to hear more from Dr. Daniel, the Nexus podcast, like I said, I'm going to pin it in the comments of the YouTube channel, or if wherever you're at. Are you on like Spotify or?
Yeah, Spotify,
everything?
Stitcher, Google Play,
cool,
iTunes.
The Nexus podcast, NEXUS, is where you're going to find it. So if you wanted to leave anybody with something that maybe we haven't covered or we should cover for them, is there anything that you would want to say to people as opposed to chiropractic care, being productive, being proactive? What is that message to those people?
Yeah, I would give 2 messages. So I love what I have to just bounce off of what you said when you talked about just a second ago about re-listening. One of the things that has changed my life more than anything else over the course of the last 3 years is I used to be the guy who would be like, I'm reading 24 books this year. And that's crushing 2 books a month, right? But I realized pretty quickly that I wasn't retaining anything of any of that stuff. So I was like reading books to give myself a pat on the back, but I wasn't implementing anything.
Right.
The following year, so this is in 2018, I read 3 books the entire year, and I just reread them over and over and over and over and over. And then fast forward to 2021, I'm reading 1 book for the entire year, and I'm not going to read any other book, and I'm going to read it. But it's cool because it's like completely transformed the way that I think and the person that I become. So for whatever it is, like it's such a great piece of advice that I just want to make sure people really hear it and it gets ingrained is like, just whatever you're passionate about, if you really want to learn about it, like just get listen to the same podcast 10, 15 times, listen on 2 times speed. So that takes you half the time to do it. That's what I've kind of trained my brain to do. And then that way you're getting content, but you can also apply it to your life, because that's a piece of it that people miss is they're like, well, I listen to all this stuff. My life's the same. It's like, yeah, because you didn't implement any of it. So implement some stuff. And then with that, like the last piece of advice that I would give everybody listening is there's one important thing that I learned when I was teaching, and I actually learned this in undergrad while I was getting my teaching degree, and that is that every single person, I don't care who you are, where you come from, what your genetics are, how much money you have, how much money your parents had, whether you're abused as a kid or mom or dad was an alcoholic or like whatever it is, we all have the same potential to be successful. Like there's no different than the dude who bought a $22 million house at the beach over here than me, except for the belief that you could actually do it and the ability to implement things in your life in order to do it and to grow to get there. So from that perspective, like if you're feeling discouraged or you feel like, oh, I can never be, trust me when I say I've seen enough people and I've worked with enough people to know that everybody has the same potential to be successful. It's literally what you do with that potential. And that's why I love being a chiropractor, because I get to unlock that in people and see them start to function and heal better. And not just heal better, but like be the person that they were meant to be. Be the person that God put you on the earth to be, and be more of that for everybody around you, because it's possible. And I know it's true. Working with kiddos, I know it's true. I've seen rapid, crazy transformations, and it all comes back to the brain and nervous system. That has to be healthy in order for you to get there. But just know that you're just as capable of any of the people that you look up to. So just keep on doing what you're doing and know that you can make it happen.
Absolutely. And finally, I'm going to leave you with this as well to add on to what Dr. Daniel says is it's cool to look to people for inspiration, but not to always compare yourself with people directly, because we could talk about Dr. Daniel in comparison to his friend that did the $22 million house. And, you know, if you're here right now, like let's take The Rock as like a far out example. If I try to implement what The Rock's doing into my lifestyle right now with dual workouts, working 18 hours a day, whatever he does, running 5 to 6 multi-million-dollar businesses, I'm burnt out just thinking about that, because I haven't, like we talked about, our lives are such a marathon that we take one step at a time. And he's been doing this, and the social media really jacks this up for people. We've talked about this as well, as you're just seeing a magnifying glass of where he's at in his life right now. You didn't see the 35 years that he's been going through in his consistency to get him to where he's at right now. And so that's what we miss out when we see successful people. It's like, oh, they have the new Rolls Royce, they have the nice house, you know, hopefully they're happy with their wife and their family if that's what they desire, and that's what you desire, whatever that is to you, because that can be different for everybody. But making sure to compare yourself just to the day before, knowing where you want to go, but being in the marathon and knowing that each step that you take can just be a little bit better, and using something like chiropractic. And then once you get the chiropractic and the nutrition and everything down pat like that, that now you're unlocking new potentials for you to take maybe a 2-step every single time than normally what you would be taking a 1-step every single time. So it just speeds up your ability to take bigger steps without tripping over your feet.
Amen. It's amazing.
So anything else you want to say about that?
No, dude, just last little bit is like, I appreciate you having me on. It's
of course,
been
man.
Super grateful for all of you listening. Super, super grateful. So super happy, and such a joy to chat and have these conversations with you always, man.
Of course. All right, guys, the Nexus podcast is going to be pinned in the comments below. Once again, please check them out. And then we appreciate Dr. Daniel for taking some time out of his wonderful busy day to be with us here today. So make sure to like and subscribe and share this video to anybody out there that may be going through any type of weird ailment. They may be stuck in a stress state. They may just not know what to do with their life, because this could potentially change it for you, for your kids. Don't settle for anything less than you know what you're worth, because as Daniel just talked about, we all have the same potential. So if you believe anything but that, you're lying to yourself. You might just need a little bit of help getting there. So seek out that help. And we appreciate you guys for tuning in. So we're going to see you guys out on that next episode, next podcast. Thank you, Dr. Daniel.
Yeah, man. Thank you.